G'day, my name is Joel Rasmussen from Southern Cross Combat, and fresh off his victory at Eternal 85 and also kind of before Eternal 87 as well, I'm
Ooh.
talking to Mr. David Martinez. I messed it up immediately. It's Martinez. We
Oh,
had a
hang on. Oh
conversation
no, no,
about
that's
this.
no. Freaking like we'll leave that in, man. But you have to answer to Jane after that. Freaking like for
Please let her know that I apologize. We did have a conversation about it before, but I got into my own
oh no,
head.
no, bro. I'm instantly telling her that was a deliberate act on your behalf. Like freaking and like no, man. Like you're the captain of the ship, so you prepare to go down with it, my friend.
We're all, listen, we all make
Adios.
mistakes. So I was gonna say I'll go down with this ship. Uh, David, I thank you very much for the time. You're coming to me fresh off of training tonight. How was training?
No, it was brilliant, man. It was brilliant. I got to drill with a young lad, Ben, and it's just recently joined us at Ignite, and the kid's got skills, man, and he's got heart too. Yeah, probably wore him out a bit with the drills, maybe, but I don't know. He seemed to keep up just fine. I'm sure he had a great time. Well, I appreciate having like guys with just the enthusiasm around to train with. Like, nah, it was fantastic.
Is he a new addition to the MMA space in general, or just specifically to your gym?
I would say to our gym, like he does seem to have a little bit of a background, maybe in boxing. Yeah, it would seem like I haven't delved too much into his combat history just yet. I only just sparred with him on the Saturday, but like he moves very well. He's got some skill, and I believe like he keeps at it. Like we can really develop him into something down the track. But like maybe I'm just getting a bit ahead of myself. Like give him room to breathe and enjoy himself.
Well, you're right in his career for him.
No, mate, freaking, I can see a UFC championship right there. I'm like, freaking, like, let's go, baby.
How is it for you when you kind of mentioned it, but having kind of new and young guys coming into the gym and you getting a chance to roll with them?
Oh man, like for me, like it's a very important part of training and to sort of get around the young guys, particularly when they're very enthusiastic about it, when they're really into like improving themselves and getting better, type thing. And because I find that energy rubs off on you. And like for me, I was always like, I had boundless energy when I was in my early 20s, but like as you get older into your later 20s and your 30s, you become a bit more efficient with the way you do things. But what it tends to translate into is almost like a form of laziness, type thing. It's just you being efficient in a sense, but it does, uh, you know, laziness is the easiest way I can put it. Type thing. So you got to get around those young people and keep that energy firing even into your later years. And I believe that definitely pays off in the long run.
Has that been something in your career now that's been happening more recently? Has there been more young guys kind of around you and you feeding off that energy?
It was something I started to notice in myself in terms of that efficiency and which I now refer to as laziness, type thing. But it's just like I I got really good at finding, like, you get good where you can, when you feel tired, you can almost like move in a way where you don't look tired, type thing. But the problem is, if you get away with that too often, your conditioning starts to fade because you're now not pushing yourself, type thing. And like you just start going through the motions, and like you don't really you show up to training quite regularly, but you're not like grinding it out looking to improve yourself, like looking to add new skills and things like that. But when you surround yourself with young people who just seem hungry, and like they want it, but they want to learn, and they're really enthusiastic about it, and like they're freaking coming buzzing about the UFC and a bunch of these fighters, and you're like, I watch a UFC card sometimes. I'm like, I don't know a single guy on here anymore, or type thing like it. And when I sit, I think, well, sorry, when I sit back and I think about that to myself, and I'm like, that's not right. I should know these guys. I should be like, yeah, heck yeah, there's a card on this weekend. I want to watch it because so and so is on the freaking undercard. I should have that enthusiasm about it, but it was lacking. And so, like, you got to surround yourself with people who are enthusiastic because that will rub off on you.
Is that something that's now been happening? Do you find yourself getting like excited for the upcoming cards and stuff?
Oh, indeed, indeed, man. And like I'm referring a lot to like the younger people in terms of enthusiasm, but like it's the same thing with like if you find older people who are more enthusiastic type thing. For instance, there's a lot of like one of my coaches, Doyle, like he's freaking like he's my striking coach, but he's forever like looking at jujitsu stuff type thing, and just his enthusiasm for it, despite being like I think a three-stripe white belt, I believe. It, but the man, like his enthusiasm for it is infectious, and it rubs off on me. And like sitting around talking, like we can sit around and talk a whole bunch of things, and all of a sudden I'm going home with ideas, and I'm like thinking of things, and I'm researching things. I'm like, oh, he might be onto something here, type thing. And I find that like again, if you just surround yourself with enthusiastic people, it will rub off onto you, and it will just carry you a lot further than I don't know, being a grizzled old veteran will.
Talking about belts, I'm unsure. What belt do you possess in BJJ?
That would be a black belt, apparently, man, or so I'm told. Oh, I've not seen it for quite a while myself. Like,
But sometimes the black belt can learn something from the white belt, is what I'm hearing.
yeah, yeah. Usually you learn what not to do from the white belts. But yeah, yeah. No, no, man. There are things like I wouldn't say you would learn a technique of a white belt necessarily, but there are ideas and perspectives that you can learn from them. I remember one time I was like, I was sparring this kid. This was years and years ago, type thing. I was just sparring around with him, and he stopped halfway through the round, and he's like, you know, you keep coming in with the exact same movement every time. And I'm like, huh, oh, you're right. Uh, and it was such a weird thing. I could have brushed that aside because I'm a freaking pro MMA fighter. He's just some kid who's been doing it for a year and a half. But the fact that he noticed that and took the time to point it out, and I'm like, hey, you're right. Like you never know where these insights might come from. So you do have to be open to it. Mm.
You kind of touched on that there with that example. Is that I'm going to use like the term ego, like being able to kind of put the ego aside of like, I am a pro fighter, but this is valid. Is that something, is that natural to you? Is that something you've learned to like put the ego aside? Or is that something that you've kind of always had?
Uh, yeah, man. Like to a degree, I've kind of had it, but it is something that like you constantly have to do. Like the way I like to visualize is like if I'm going to turn up to training, my head better be able to fit through the damn door, or type thing. It means you do have to put your ego aside, and like sometimes like eh, I mean, I talk to my any of my clients that I train in like PTs and that, particularly about being on this like wave type thing. And sort of like some days you come in and you're not that good, like you're down here, and some days like you turn up to training and you're up here, like you're just on fire type thing. But I try to tell them neither of those days is the real you. You're somewhere in the middle type thing, and that means like you can't let these low days get to you and be like, oh, I suck now, like there's no point in even trying. But at the same time, you can't let these really good days be the ones to define you as well, because if you fall for that trap, then even your normal days are going to suck. Your regular days are going to suck because they're not these ones. This is how you define yourself now, and now you're performing at your normal level, and you're like, oh, I must be terrible then. Yeah. So you can't really fall for the trap of like if you're having a really good day or a really bad day, you can't like define yourself by that. So that being said, like you have to put your ego aside uh, in that sense.
Talking about the general in training, you're training at Ignite MMA, you're part of the Dunstan Death Squad. I've spoken to some of your teammates about you've got a core good group of guys, but also it feels like is a bit of a revolving door. We have people coming in. How is that for you and your development of your game, where you've got not just good guys consistently with you, but also like some people coming in and going, coming in and going?
Yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, you said you've spoken to my teammates. Now, what exactly have those flogs been saying about me, man? No, no, I don't trust those guys. Freaking, they're always talking smack to me at the gym. So who knows what they're saying on interviews about me?
You're the one
No,
who's bullying
no,
Gouchy.
yeah, freaking gouchy, man. Freaking calf kicking dwarf. This guy, this guy. Man thinks he can go down our weight division, become two-weight champion, and all of a sudden he's telling me what to do. This guy.
So in terms of advice, it goes white belts and then Sean Gouchy. Is that what I'm hearing? You're more likely to
You
take.
don't listen to Gouchy at all. You tell him to take a seat and freaking like let the pros handle it, my brother. Freaking, but nah, man. Like to give Gouchy his credit, man. Like the guy is a legend, man. Like some of the sparring sessions that I've watched him in over the recent months, I'm like, God damn, like, I would pay money to watch those. Those are main event fights, and they're just sparring sessions at the Ignite gym. Gouchy's something special, man, and I'm pretty stoked to call him a teammate. Hey, now, circling back to your question, brother. Yes, yes. Like I think the biggest advantage of Ignite, man, is that revolving door that you said. The fact that we have people constantly coming to visit and train with us. That is a massive advantage, man, because you're introduced to like different styles, but like higher level styles, type thing, and as well as the old saying, "It's not what you know, it's who you know." That comes into factor as well. If you know good guys and they come to train with you regularly, like you can't help but get good yourself.
I received a text message just before this interview started from Mr.
Oh
Ryan,
no!
from Mr. Ryan Dunstan, uh,
Ah,
who let me know I wasn't aware you're living with Ryan. I didn't
mm,
realize.
mm,
I spoke to a an Aussie boy who was living in the US called Isaac Thompson. I
yep.
messed his name up again as well. I did it in that
Oh,
interview.
what?
I've only done it twice. You and Isaac, me making mistakes.
Yeah, mate, mate.
Um, and he also lives with his coach, and he kind of spoke about it. How is it for you when you live with your head coach?
Well, put it this way, man. You don't want to make too many mistakes in the gym because they will follow you home, and you will be reminded until you go to bed, and then you will be reminded again once you wake up. But no, man, like for me, I think it's been a real advantage living with Ryan, because again, and like we get to talk about the fights and development and everything, but in a much more casual setting, type thing. And I found that's really helps with our development. And like, 'cause anytime I go to a fight now, like it's like I'm taking my brother into war with me, man. And it's just, yeah, I'm stoked.
I'm sure it is hard to like, oh, I don't feel like going to training today when he's like
Nah,
standing in the doorway.
it's like, yeah, nah, man, I might skip today. He's like, okay, see you at the gym. I'm like, ah, damn it. The worst is when he says, see you at the hill. And I'm like, oh.
I did want to talk about the hill sprints. I wanted to ask, we kind of already touched on Gouchy, but has Gouchy joined you for the runs yet?
Oh, man, he was there at the start and he faded. Like, typical. Typical flyweight. I don't know, man. Like, at first, I was invited to, like, oh, we're going to be running these hills as the team. And told me, oh, this is fantastic. It took about three, three sessions. 3 sessions, and suddenly I'm running the hill by myself. And then I was running the hill by myself for I think about 2 months straight, and I'm like, what the heck, you flogs? And so I do. Well, apparently they've been running the hill at just different times, and I'm not buying it, man. I'm freaking like, I turn up every Saturday afternoon, run the freaking hill, and I'm like, where are you guys at?
You'll believe it when you see it.
Yeah, yeah, freaking. I don't know. I see photos of them at the hill, and I don't see no footage of them freaking running.
You talked about that was something you were gonna do, guys all do together, and now it's kind of just you when you do it. How is that for you when, when you're working out in the gym, you've got other people there,
Mm.
but you're the guy who's making you run up the hill by yourself for your kind of discipline? How is that?
Ah, I imagine it does help discipline wise. The fact that I'm out there doing it, like nobody makes me do it. Like nobody's going to say, "Hey, have you run the hill? Oh, you better run the hill." Like no one's going to make it type thing. I get out there and do it myself type thing. So it does factor into self discipline. That one of the things I really liked doing is I started using a timer type thing, and I don't time necessarily each hill run individually, but rather them as a collective type thing, and then I average them out type thing. And I've got to keep the average at a certain below a certain number type thing. So obviously the first 2 to 3 sprints are like this is easy, but then when you start to get up into the final ones, it's like oh no, you've got to start to really knuckle down. And I find that's very good because you don't realize as you get fatigued how much like you take your foot off the pedal all type thing. But when you've got this timer, like measuring each rep that you're running up that hill, and you're like, all right, I've got to really bite down, get to the top as fast as I can. And you can feel your legs just like lead type thing, but you've got to get there because you've got to keep that average low. Yeah, I find that was a massive help because when I'm running by myself, like again, I could just jog up the hill and no one would uh, bat an eye. Like I'd be like, yeah, I did 10 hill sprints, but half of them was me like jogging up. Uh, but no, as long as I keep that time and I keep my average below what I want, uh, I know that I'm putting in the work.
Are those differences and those, being responsible to yourself and that foot on the gas, do you feel that when you're in the cage? Do you feel yourself being able to say, no, let's keep going?
Yes, yeah. In particular, man, like lately I've fallen in love with using the assault bike. Like it's a freaking medieval torture device, that thing. But I love using it. And my guy Chris Jaffrey, he sets me up with a good program and of doing like these anaerobic sprints. And into the later session, like later part of the session, I should say, freaking and just die and you would I don't know, looking at it on paper, I'm like this looks easy. Like, look at all this rest that I get. Like, should be fine. But like, no. When every rep is a max effort, like you're gonna wish that the rest was doubled and it still wouldn't be enough. But yeah, that has translated into like my cardio seems to be really getting off the charts in my fights. Like my volume and everything is really increased. Uh, well, at least for me personally, I feel that way.
I mentioned at the top of the interview, we're talking to you after Eternal 85, your victory over Wes Kappa. Uh, how do you feel about your performance in that fight?
Overall, man, I think it was one of my better performances, if not maybe my best so far. Aside from getting dropped in the second round by that left hook, uh, uh it was pretty top notch, man. Like I went out there, just sort of dismantled him.
Of course, if everything went to plan and everything went how you drew it up, fighting would be easy, but it doesn't, so it's hard. But how was that fight compared to what you thought it would be? Did he act, or was he as tough as you thought he would be?
He was moving a lot more than what I expected him to. Particularly at the start. Like he was just going side to side around the edges of the cage, and I was like, oh, okay. I expected him to be a bit more like his usual self, the stalking, the planted feet, the ready to throw hard. But no, he was on his bike quite early and quite often, and even in the third round, he was able to keep moving, quite well. So that kind of caught me off to begin with, but I figured, well, he's just trying to make it difficult for me to shoot on him. Yeah, yeah. So I tried cutting him off a few times, but it kept sidestepping, moving left and right, and I'm like, oh heck, I'm gonna have to pick my shots here. And
I
then of course I got a bit carried away in the second round, threw a kick, a lazy kick, left hook came on the top, sat me down. I'm like, Well, I remember as soon as my butt hit the ground, I'm like, heck, I've got $200 on myself on Neds. I better get up here.
Uh, is this have you? I'm assuming you have because you've been able to recount it to me, but I don't know. I don't fight. Maybe it gets tattooed on your brain. Have you gone back and watched the fight?
Yes, I watched it briefly back at the hotel. Time. They're not paying a whole awful amount of attention, but like, yeah, everything happened in there according to how I remembered it. Like, I didn't lose any like memory or anything from getting rocked, or getting dropped, I should say. But no, everything sort of played out the way I remembered it. So I think my brain held up in there.
How was the weight heading into that fight? I know throughout the career that's always kind of been something with you. How was like making weight? Did that all go well?
Oh yeah, man, freaking! There's always that stigma based on the last few events, but like, no, weight cut was fine, man. And I had my boy Doyle in charge of that, and yeah, checking in with me each week, and then like helping me through the water cut. And if anyone is interested in doing a water cut, then they haven't had one, like I'd recommend Doyle or to help you out with the final stages because yeah, he is top notch.
Now that fight between you and Wes Kappa was number one contenders fight for the now vacant lightweight title in Eternal. That fight is going to happen at Hex Eternal 87. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's pretty far out. Has that been signed? Like, are we 100% know that that's happening?
I'm pretty certain that's happening, man. I have not signed anything in all honesty, but I'm pretty certain that that's happening. So, yeah, yeah,
And
I won't provide any like controversies to that. I'll say it's happening.
when you're entering a fight, but you know that all right, well, I have to win this fight, and I know literally when the next one is. Like it's there it is. How is that for you? Is that like extra tiring? Do you get a chance to rest between camps between 85 and 87?
Well, they've given me about 10 weeks between 85 and 87, man. I believe that's sufficient time for me. I'm quite happy with that number. Uh, um, yeah, as for like, yeah, when you have a fight coming up and you know who the next person is after that, like there is a little bit of a mental trap where you start to overthink, or you start to look past your current matchup. And so you always got to sort of pull yourself back in and remind yourself, like, hey, one step at a time. Uh, because you just, yeah, especially when you start like getting into the weeds and specifics of how you want to move and deal with, the intricacies of the matchup type thing. You start getting a bit carried away thinking about what the next guy is going to be like. And you forget about, hang on, you got to deal with the particularities of the upcoming fight first. So yeah, fortunately for me, like in the case of like Kappa and Webb, like both of them, dangerous strikers type of thing. So I can kind of like preparing for one also kind of leads into preparing for the other, if you get what I mean. And so that was quite helpful. But yeah, yeah, yeah. The real key point is, man, always focus on the next step. Yeah, and don't worry too much about the future because the future doesn't exist unless you get over the first hurdle.
Kind of basing off what you touched on there about very similar styles. What do you think of Harry Webb and his style?
Yeah, he's very, very well, he's a very talented guy, very athletic, uh, uh, friggin' all round dangerous, man. And I think he's definitely a rising star uh in the scene, but I haven't really seen him against any like legit lightweight contenders just yet. So it'll be interesting in like for me to be his first major test within the division.
Do you think he's faced anyone with a similar skill set to yourself?
Off the top of my head, no, I wouldn't say so.
Do you think that will have like a heavy effect on the fight? You comparing him to Wes? Of course, there are differences, but you've faced people that may be similar to him, but he hasn't faced people that are similar to you.
Yeah, I do believe that factors in the fact that I've had to deal with people who are dangerous with their hands, whereas he hasn't had to deal with someone who's like incredibly grappling heavy, such as myself. And I imagine that will factor into the fight, regardless of what either of us try to do to prepare for the other. Like I do imagine we each have strengths that's going to, detract from each other, so to speak.
So in your career, this you are fighting now for a third reign as the Eternal Lightweight Champion. So few people become champion once. How does it feel? Going into this fight, how does it compare to going into your first and second title challenging fights?
In terms of like going in, man, like there is a feeling of like, I've been there, done that, type thing. Like the first one was like really exciting in the sense I'm like, yeah, like uh, I get a fight for an Australian title all the type thing. So that was, you got like I was like starry eyed kid type thing, and then the second one was just like, oh, like I can win this one back. Uh, and like the second one was incredible because I had this storyline with Aguilera. The man just set out to try and bully me. It, and then oh yeah, by the way, shout out to Aguilera winning the demolition lightweight title over like just a few weeks back, man. What a legend. Uh, but yeah, but now going into the third, this is kind of like, yeah, there's I don't know, this is a feeling I was born to do this. Uh, like I was like I don't know, there's a sense of destiny about it, type thing. It's kind of weird, and maybe it's just a thought floating around in my head. Who knows? But it feels like, hang on, this is inevitable.
When you say this is inevitable, what do you mean by this? As in you fighting or what?
Me fighting for the third title and securing it. It's something about it just feels inevitable, and I can't shake that feeling. Yeah, I'm usually very I don't know. I usually have a healthy amount of skepticism about myself, type thing, but for some reason, this just feels like, yeah, yeah, I'm going after this. I'm getting this one.
I know you said it's kind of hard to put it into words, and I can understand that, but what do you think that feeling is? Is that coming from a specific place?
Let me put on my thesaurus and see if I can find some words that might fit the description there, man. Like I don't know how to describe it, man. There is just this feeling that I'm like, yeah. I don't know if it's just excitement from what's happened with the last fight, man. I'm probably just riding a high or something. But yeah, something about this feels special.
When you look at the man who captured the lightweight title the first time, as well as the man who captured it the second time, and compare them to yourselves now, what differences do you see?
Definitely a lot more maturity, man. A lot more sort of like, and definitely a lot more grounded. Whereas, like, when I captured the man who caught the belt the first time, man, like 15 fight win streak, undefeated as a pro, hadn't faced any adversity. He really hadn't, and yeah, it kind of like just thought, well, winning's just the way it's going to be from now on. But the guy who caught the belt the second time, went through the rough. Like, to go from winning 15 fights straight to losing 3 fights straight and then losing 4 out of 5 fights, I'm like, that's pretty rough. Like that's like uh, full on coin flip, man. Uh, and so, I mean, 9 day difference. Uh, but I managed to get through that sort of dark period, and overall I emerged even better from it. I started to change things. I started to explore my options in terms of training. I started to branch out and train with more people and seek expertise in some of my deficiencies, such as my striking. And later on, like the finer points of my grappling in terms of like actually getting damage off with using my grappling. And that's sort of like, that's in a roundabout way, yeah, yeah, it just became a bit more of a, for lack of a better term, just a crafty veteran. And when I captured the belt the second time, but then I started to build on it even more. I found, I started to same sort of thing. Again, still branching out, training with other people, seeking out expertise in other areas, man. But like just doing even more of that, and I find it overall has paid off big time. And I feel like that's going to show in this third title fight.
Is this the best version of David Martinez stepping into this fight?
No, no, but it's getting along the way there.
What is there left to get along to get to the best version?
To be honest, man, I do not know. I do not know, but I do plan on discovering what that is.
When I asked you how it feels before both of the titles, yeah, and you kind of talked about like this is a place you've been before, it's kind of comfortable, you know what it's like to fight for a title. Uh the UFC will be in town. Harry Webb is getting viewed as the new hotness. Um when you've been they're in town, it's a very high stakes environment. What is the goal for you in your career at this point?
The goal? Oh, because the UFC's in town?
Well, it's
Mate,
in
those guys
town.
wouldn't even give me tickets. So what am I going to do? I'm going to sit around and have to. I'm going to be in Perth, man, having to watch it in the pub. Like, what the heck? Like, that's a. Anyway, that aside, man, no, no. So the goal, I don't know. For me, man, I'm not really too fussed about like thinking about bigger promotions or anything like that. I mean, that'd be nice, but I'm really sort of shifting my goals toward just building myself up. So particularly like my skill set, as well as like my skill set in fighting, but as well as setting myself up outside of fighting as well, sort of growing in that sense in terms of like what sort of avenues can I go down to sort of generate some sort of income that can then support my training and sort of allow me a bit more freedom. Because the more I have, the more I can like really dial up the intensity of my training while maximizing my recovery in between them. Because at the moment, things like doing my night fill at Woolworths and stuff like that, that takes away from the recovery side of things. My sleep quality is definitely not as good, or due to working late and staying up late as a result, things like that. So no, the goal is not really. It's more about focusing on the inward side of things and really sort of developing myself. But because if I can develop myself, man, and then if the opportunity arises, then I'm there to capture it. I'm there to take it, type thing. But if I don't focus on myself, I'm just like, oh, I want to get to the UFC. By the time I get there, like I'll probably like I imagine I'll suffer a loss of motivation because like, oh, I've arrived now, but I'm not prepared uh, for it. I'm probably like battle worn with everything I've gone through to get myself there. It's I mean, whereas no, now I'm more focused on like developing myself and just overall having fun and enjoying it as well. Because if I mean, I remember when I started back when I was 18, I'm like, I freaking love this. And somewhere along the line, it became like a job for me, and that is the absolute worst that could happen to you because when you lose the enthusiasm and you start to just go through the motions and like, oh, I'm just a fighter, this is what I do type thing, you stop learning, you stop growing. And like, you should be a better version of yourself each year onward type thing until you reach the point where you start to physically decline. Well, I haven't reached that point yet. So why have I slowed and not been getting better? Because I lost the enthusiasm and the passion for it. I started seeing it as a job. Oh, and that was just the wrong way to view it. But now I'm like getting back into really enjoying it, really adding, like, exploring what I can do in terms of like adding skills here and there, developing it, training with new people, and really sort of letting their sort of enthusiasm rub off on me as well. It's like just this cycle of accelerated gains in the sense.
We're back where we started talking about people coming in and getting their enthusiasm. And I wanted to ask you, when we were talking about that earlier in the interview, you talked about don't let the good moments define you and don't let the bad moments define you.
Yeah.
Uh, how do you define you?
How do I define me? Well, I'm generally not. Oh no, I hate questions like this. I hate thinking introspectively. uh, yeah, no, I'm not too sure how to define myself, man. I don't typically, I don't know, I typically view myself as a bit of an idiot, type thing. But nonetheless, I'm a guy who has fun, and freaking does what he loves for a living, and surrounded himself with some pretty dang awesome people, which has resulted in like me being considered one of the better guys on the regional scene. And again, yeah, that's just a side effect of the people that I sort of live and train with, man. And like, uh, I get to enjoy all this success just because of them, really.
David Martinez, I thank you so much for the time. It is a real pleasure to speak with you. It is nighttime on a Wednesday. What does the rest of the night entail for you, and what does tomorrow entail for you?
Oh man, I'm gonna go watch me some freaking Gentlemen on Netflix. Is what I'm gonna do. Yeah. And I'm gonna sit back, sip some hot chocolate, and enjoy myself.
Fantastic. I'm very glad to hear that. Enjoy doing that. Thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
So I appreciate you having me on, brother. Thank you very much.